So recently, I received a message from one of my viewers that asked me what is a spell counter and how do you use it. Now I realized after showing you and starting to go over the cards in this new spellcaster deck, Spellcaster's Command, which utilizes the spell counters, it is a little complicated at first to understand what they are. So I decided to go over them. Alright, first of all, the only time you have to worry about spell counters ever in Yu-Gi-Oh! Is if, one, you're using a deck that uses spell counters, or if your opponent's using one with spell counters. Or if you're both using one with spell counters. Anyways, what a spell counter is, it's sort of like, I guess, in and of it, this is a complicated concept. Alright, I'm going to bring some cards up to show you. The main card of the deck, the magical Cathedral of Endymine, it gets a spell counter every time a card is activated. Right? Every time a spell card is activated. That's basically how you get spell counters. If a card tells you it gets a spell counter at a certain time. There are like 2 or 3 ways in which you get spell counters. The first way, when a card tells you it gets a spell counter, like this one. The second way, which is when it is normal summoned, possibly special summoned, but like this card, Dark Red Enchanter. When he's normal summoned, he gets 2 spell counters. Or something like the Pitch Black Power Stone, which gives itself 3 spell counters, and every turn you can move 1 spell counter to another card that can use spell counters. Now, you hold them. Anyway, how do you use a spell counter? With cards like Pitch Black Power Stone and Apprentice Magician, you can get extra spell counters. Usually cards that hold spell counters like Magical Cathedral of Endymine and Dark Red Enchanter get spell counters 1 for each card on the field that gets it every time a spell card is activated. Now, you only use spell counters effects if a card says so, like this one. For every spell counter on it, it gains 300. This is unique to this card. If a spell counter is on Magical Cathedral, it's obviously a spell, so it's not going to gain 300. If it's on Skill Dark Magician or something, it's not going to gain 300. Only this card. Because it tells you that it gets spell. It's like putting tokens on a card. It's like, basically, when this card is normal summoned, place 2 tokens on this card. This card gains 300 attack for every token on it. Every time a spell is activated, put another token on this card. And then sometimes it tells you to remove things like spell counters to do certain effects. Like once per turn, you can discard 2 spell counters from this card to have your opponent randomly discard a card from their hand. The reason that this card is so good is that it utilizes the power of spell counters. Because it is a spell, so when you play, any cards like this will get a spell counter just for playing this. Every time a spell is activated, it gets one. Some cards, I almost forgot. Some cards have a maximum amount of spell counters they can carry, like, Skill Dark Magician. Every time you or your opponent activates 1 spell card, put 1 spell counter on this card, maximum 3. Which means you cannot go over 3 whatsoever. As I was saying, though, like this card, it says, anyway, it says that you can discard a spell counter. It says that you can discard a spell counter in order to save it from being destroyed when it's, in a while. You know, if it has one, you can get rid of it to keep it from being destroyed. It also gains it from whenever a card with spell counters is destroyed, it gets those spell counters. So that makes this card good. Normally, when a card dies with spell counters, it just dies. It doesn't come back. You don't get the spell counters. That's basically all spell counters are in and of itself. You only utilize them if a card says that you utilize them. It's like its own personal effect. It's like, put tokens on this card so that you can do this by getting rid of the tokens. Really, what I use for spell counters are just dice, like this card is summoned, put 2 on, then increase and decrease it as I use it. It's just like, I don't know how the Cloudians work, but I saw a duel online where people use Cloudians and they had some tokens on them or something. Sort of like that, I guess, if you know how to use Cloudians. if that's how they work, because I have no idea. I think there's cloud tokens. Anyway, it's like just putting little counters or dice on this card, and then doing what the card says you can do with them. Spell counters are basically nothing. There are no, like, okay, there are spell counters, but they are nothing unless there's a card telling them what to do. If the card dies, they die with it. There's no good or bad about a spell counter unless a card says that there is. And you can't have a spell counter unless a card says that there is. Like, okay, each Mike's Power Stone put a spell counter on a card that can have a spell counter. That would mean a card like Dark Red Enchanter. It would not mean something like Summoner Monk. It doesn't say anything about spell counters. Only cards that can hold spell counters can receive spell counters. That's basically all there is to spell counters.